Now,
from Greater Santon and beyond, get ready for the SANDTON Times Hour
with your host,
Alexander.
It's the SANDTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 FM, and as always, available as a podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify. My name is Alexander Leibner. This is edition 106. It's week 11 of 2023, and we're well into March. And if you want to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za or connect with us on social media at SANDTON Times and visit the website www.sandtontimes.co.za. And as always, if you want to send some questions, a comment, some feedback, some thoughts, some input into the content, all is welcome, and I encourage you to use those channels to do so. And if you're listening from across Gauteng, South Africa, or somewhere in the world, on radio or as a podcast community, I'm happy to report that all is well in Santon land. And as always, Vincenzo joins me behind the desk. Listen, I'm glad we didn't stick around last week for that cabinet reshuffle announcement. I think we would have been here till late at night. My gosh, that was late. And also, nothing earth-shattering, right? I mean, I suppose from tourism and the arts and culture portfolio, they got a bit of a refresh. But let's see what happens there. If you are listening live on Mix 93.8 and not to the podcast, well, you can use the WhatsApp line right now. It's open 0848220938. And just save the number on your phone. And then you can just WhatsApp whenever you want to. Not just this show, any show on Mix. So there you have it, 0848220938. Send a WhatsApp. It's always good to hear from you. Well, the weeks are just flying at the moment. I don't know about you. It just feels like things are really starting to gain momentum. And then we've got Easter around the corner, and then everything slows down again. So this is, I suppose, like the last big push before that Easter holiday, which is basically almost like the December holiday. I mean, it's just one public holiday and one holiday after another. But I had a breakfast this past Wednesday with Discovery Bank here at their head office in Sandton with Visa. And they were looking at how we're spending our money, which is quite interesting. And online shopping is going strong. So is the food delivery and takeaways business. It seems like we're spending a lot of money on food delivery and takeaways. On the one hand, I think load shedding is playing a big part in that, according to some of the data. Makes sense. When load shedding hits, we hit a restaurant or we order on our apps or online, and the food gets delivered to you. And I think the food delivery systems are also just become so good that it's becoming a little bit of a seamless exercise. And then local travel is also one of those big expenditure points. So all of you people with Discovery Bank and you've got the Discovery credit card, you seem to be still going strong. I mean, all the things that are happening around us. Yet Discovery Bank's clients seem to be holding up quite all right for now. Well, coming up on this week's show, one of Santon's largest church communities celebrated its 30th anniversary towards the end of last year. I catch up with its founder and senior pastor to chat about the journey so far. Then he's one of South Africa's most well-known artists and certainly comedic royalty in South Africa. And he's back with a brand new show, and I'm looking forward to chatting to him in a few minutes. Then, as fuel prices keep going up and the rand weakens, have you thought of switching to an electric or hybrid car? Well, I'll be getting some more info from a recent survey on the topic, so stay tuned for that. And finally, a play thousands of years in the making heads to Santon to make you laugh about your relationship. This and more coming up shortly. But as always, we'll do the headlines in a minute. But before we do that, let's get the hour going with something from our playlist.
A mix of your favorite music on Mix 93.8. Always Mix. Today and tomorrow on Mix
93.8.
Follow the SANDTON Times on social media.
At SANDTON Times.
This is the SANDTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 with Gorgeous by Ash and Naylor. I saw some people went to Ultra this past weekend, Vincenzo, and yeah, they did look indeed very gorgeous. It's time for the headlines for this week. Well, the South African.com reports CCTV footage of a kidnapping in Bryanston this past week has been shared on social media. And in the CCTV footage, a man can be seen running into a car dealership trying to evade his kidnappers. And then a few seconds later, he is seen being pulled by his clothes while on the floor trying to escape. The suspects are heavily armed in the footage, and they utilize a silver Mercedes-Benz C-Class C180. And Gauteng seems to be a hotspot for kidnappings at the moment. And it isn't clear what has happened to this businessman, but we can only hope that he is found soonest. Then talking about Ultra, 27-year-old South African rapper Costa Titch collapsed on stage during his performance at the music festival and died. A year ago, Costa released a song 4 a.m. in SANDTON, where he talks about some of the major attractions of the area, and friends and family are left completely shocked and horrified. I mean, 27 years old, and condolences go out to his family and friends during this very difficult time. And then a little something different. I wasn't quite sure where we're going to slot this in otherwise during this hour, but we've got an exclusive movie screening happening first week in April, and I'd like some of you to be part of it. Together with New Metro Hyde Park Corner, I'll be hosting our first movie night and an exclusive screening of the movie Air, starring Ben Affleck, Viola Davis, Matt Damon, Chris Tucker, and Jason Bateman. Air tells the story of shoe salesman Sonny Vaccaro and how he led Nike in its pursuit of the greatest athlete in the history of basketball, Michael Jordan, creating a partnership that revolutionized the world of sports and contemporary culture. Vincenzo, do you have the trailer?
1984 has been a tough year. Our sales are down, our growth is down.
Sonny, I brought you in here to grow the basketball business.
People don't know what the hell a Nike is.
What's a Converse?
NBA All-Star shoe.
There's nothing cool about Nike.
You would have to have a pretty compelling pitch.
I can tell them the one thing the other companies can't compete with. Our basketball division is terrible.
I do not love it. This is where you come up with a brilliant idea that no one else can see. Let's hear it.
I got it. I found him.
Who's that? Jesus? Can't afford it.
I'm willing to bet my career on one guy. My name's Sonny Vaccaro. I'm with Nike.
Do you typically make it a habit of showing up at people's front doors unannounced?
I don't like to take no for an answer. Oh, man. Here we go. You asked me what I do here. This is what I do. I find you players, and I feel it this time. Yeah, okay, it's risky. When you were selling sneakers out of the back of your Plymouth, that was risky. Don't change that now.
For a rookie?
Yes.
Who's never set foot on an NBA court.
That's the literal definition of rookie, yeah.
What's the plan?
We build a shoe line around just him. I need the greatest basketball shoe that's ever been made.
Who's the player?
Michael Jordan.
Your motor is
You have our attention.
You show up at the house.
I believe in his son. I believe he's the future. And his story is gonna make us want to fly. But a shoe is just a shoe.
Until my son steps into it.
Got a name for it? Air Jordan.
I don't know.
Seriously?
Maybe it'll grow on me.
So that's Air. I think it sounds like a really exciting movie. And if you want to make it to that screening, be sure to hop onto the SANDTONTimes.co.za right now. Make sure you're registered for our newsletter, because we'll be putting all the information on how you can be part of that screening into the newsletter this week. And yeah, that's the best way of doing it. Just be part of the newsletter and you'll get all the information as and when it becomes available. But let's leave the headlines right there for this week. It started with a small congregation in a humble building, and 30 years later has become a landmark in SANDTON. I'm joined by Pastor Andre Olivier, Senior Pastor of Rivers Church, right after the break.
The best of SANDTON and beyond.
You're listening to the SANDTON Times Hour.
Always Mix, today and tomorrow on Mix 93.8. Always Mix, today and tomorrow on Mix 93.8.
The best of SANDTON and beyond.
You're listening to the SANDTON Times Hour.
So SANDTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and also available on all good podcast platforms. And as we get this week going, I am thrilled to finally get an interview up and running, one that we've been trying to do for such a long time. And the man's just been so busy. But we finally managed to get some time with him, and it's to mark a really big anniversary in the church's life. It's Rivers Church in SANDTON celebrated 30 years towards the end of last year. And to chat to me about this and a few things more is Pastor Andre Olivier, the senior pastor of Rivers Church. And let me take this opportunity to congratulate you on 30 years. I mean, that's quite a big milestone.
Thanks so much. We appreciate all the congratulations. It is a big milestone.
Would you have thought that when you walked into what was then a very humble building in 1992, I think there were descriptions of orange walls and sort of turquoise roofs with about 70 people there, that this is what it would end up being almost 30 years later, a place of thousands, a place of community, multiple campuses, reaching out to so many people every single week?
We had no idea, absolutely no idea. I never thought that we would even stay in Johannesburg. We moved up from Cape Town. They asked me to come and pick up the struggling church. It had been split, been through troubles. And we moved up here and we weren't welcome. The people asked, were you the only person they could find? Were you like the last resort? You don't have the qualifications to run this church. But after 6 months of being here and just enduring it and really grinding through it, I realized that God had sent us here for a purpose. And this was the place that we were meant to be. And I kind of had a vision that maybe we could grow a church of 1,000, maybe 1,200 over many, many years, make a small impact in the community because, there were so many other larger churches. And, if a church had a fair size, it would attract people and would feel respected and so on. That was kind of in the back of my mind. But as we progressed along, I knew that God's got greater plans than I have. And we went from step to step, to the middle auditorium, which was a 1,200 seater, and then ultimately now to the 3,000 seat building, and to 5 campuses across South Africa.
Well, the SANDTON building is definitely a landmark. It's there on corner South and Middle Road if you've driven down Morningside. It's there right on the corner. It's part glass, part brick. I mean, it's beautifully designed. It's very thought through. And it's the result of a bit of vision casting that you also did back then. Because, I mean, of the 70 people, I'm sure quite a few walked out and quite a few walked back in again. And you had to kind of pull this all together and tell people, well, this isn't the beginning or the end. This is now just a stepping stone to something bigger.
Yes, it's not like building a company. It's really everything's based on trust. People either like you and trust you and respect you, or they don't. And you either suit their taste, your teaching and the style of ministry either suits their taste, and then they choose a church. And so you can't really force people or persuade them or kind of say, look where we're going, stay with us. You just keep casting vision, just keep meeting people's needs. That's all we've done. We had our neighbors really quite aggressively attack us and threaten us with lawyers. We're in a legal building and we're in a legal church and there's far too much traffic, etc., etc. I won't go into that. But suffice to say, when we met with them, all I said to them is, please help us, because we can't stop the people from coming. We just have services and they just keep coming. And they were kind of disarmed because they realized, we hadn't engineered this thing. It hadn't been some clever marketing campaign. We simply present good church. We meet the kids' needs. We feed the poor. We feed 77,000 children a week, besides the 10 orphanages that we have. So we're just doing good work. We're serving people, and people just keep coming back. And that's how we ended up where we are. And the building's design and everything wasn't to be impressed. We didn't set out to be impressed. Let's build a building that impresses everybody. It was, let's build a building that meets the needs and that is a good place to be. Let's keep our young people here so they can meet other young people instead of feeling that they've got to go to the cool shopping centers and after a service is done, they have to go. So that was the intention in mind when we did it. And I looked at inner city buildings throughout the world, looked at good designs, ones where you could see the platform clearly, good coffee shops, good environment to be in. And we designed it around that. I mean, it's a very original building, but that's what makes people feel at home there.
Well, you've got a fantastic video that captures this 30-year journey, which we'll also put up on the website as well, if people want to watch that and get a bit of a sense of where things have come from. This didn't just sort of appear out of nowhere one weekend, and it definitely is a very inspiring and very interesting story to watch. And I do encourage people to go onto the SANDTONTimes.co.za and go have a look at that video. We'll put it up there for people to also reference. One other big milestone that you also hit is that you've just celebrated your 50th wedding anniversary. And I'm not sure which one was easier or harder to get through, the 30 years or the 50 years.
Well, it's 30 years at SANDTON, 40 years in the ministry altogether, and 50 years married. So 3 milestones in 1 year, quite a big year for us. Phil and I got married in our late teens, and we were the least likely to succeed. As the family watched us, it was like, these two hip guys, let's see if this lasts longer than 2 years. Well, we've outlasted quite a number of people. And by God's grace, we're still good friends and partners. We've been partners in business. We've been partners in different churches, and finally in SANTON now for the last 30 years, working alongside each other. My wife runs the women's ministry and has grown that significantly. Her last conference in 2019, before we went into lockdown, she had a double conference, almost 6,000 delegates registered. And so she's built that very successfully. We've been good partners working together. We have a lot of fun. Listen, 50 years together, you get on each other's nerves at times. But I can say God has really given me someone to work alongside me. And the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 4, 2 are better than one. And we can indeed say that is so true.
Amazing. Well, what are some of the plans for the church going into 2023? I know you've got some ambitious projects that you're looking at.
Yeah, we're rebuilding as a congregation and seeing people come back, and that's very healthy. Rebuilding young adults and youth and seeing people attending and enjoying church again. We also have just purchased a piece of land in Belito for our Belito church right next door in order to create more parking. And we've purchased a piece of land in Durban North for our new Durban North campus because we've outgrown that building. So they'll start to build within the next year, a brand new auditorium with parking garages underneath. And so that's in the pipeline. We are busy exploring for land in Centurion currently, and it's on the cards. We're busy negotiating. So they'll start building very soon. And we constantly are reaching out and expanding. And, as the needs arise, we'll take the opportunities, and we hope we can plant more campuses before we're done. But certainly with the team I have at the moment, they're growing and doing such a wonderful job. We're just ready to keep moving forward.
Before I let you go, I know there's another big weekend coming up for you, which is the Easter weekend. Can you give us a little bit of a taste of what you've got planned if people might thought of coming along or have never been and thought, well, maybe, we should do something on Easter weekend? Is there anything that you've got lined up?
We've got Easter, Good Friday services. We've got 2 in the morning and 1 at 3 p.m., the exact time that Jesus was crucified. And then on Sunday, we've got 3 again. So 6 services for the weekend. It's one of the high weekends of Rivers Church, where we really just focus on Jesus. We celebrate the death and resurrection and focus on what it means to be a Christian, to have salvation through Christ. And so we welcome anybody and everybody, usually a very, very special occasion. So we'd love to see people coming. And if you're interested in visiting Rivers Church, that's a good time to visit.
Well, congratulations there, Pastor Andre Olivier of Rivers Church, as I say, the major campus in SANTON, and then all the other campuses that have come up in the last 30 years, giving us a bit of a taste of what it's been like over the last 3 decades. And it's the bottom of the hour of the SANTON Times Hour. And let's take a quick musical break, and there's more of the SANTON Times Hour on the other side of this.
Mixing your favorite music on Mix 93.8.
That's the power of love.
A mix of music you love.
Back for more?
The SANTON Times Hour continues.
You're listening to the SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 with BGRZ and a remix of Agola featuring Angelique Kidjo. Taking you into the second half of the SANTON Times Hour, my name is Alexander Leibner, and you know how this works. If there's anything that sounded great on the show, something that you didn't get a chance to take note of, well, you can get all the details on the website www.santontimes.co.za under this week's show notes, and you can get a detailed breakdown of everything we've discussed, everything we've mentioned during the show, and so much more. Also, be sure to check out the social media accounts at SANTON Times, and feel free to engage. You can send a tweet, a WhatsApp, a DM, a voice note. You can send a postcard if you want. I'm sure we can find a PO box somewhere. And you can also use the hashtag SANTON Times Hour. As we get into the second half of this week's show, I am truly honored to be joined by one of South Africa's theatrical greats, comedic greats. I mean, just so many greats on so many levels. He's got a new show coming out in April, and I'm joined by the one and only Peter Dirk Eisen. Peter, thank you so much for making time to be on the SANTON Times Hour.
It's a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you.
Well, Peter, I mentioned you've got a new show coming up, but I think before we get into this new show that you're going to be presenting, I mean, you've lived through so many interesting times and moments in South Africa. I even remember there was a documentary made on your life called Laughing at the Dark. And I mean, that must have aged quite differently right now.
Yep, it ages. It changes by the day. I used to have 365 days in my year. Now I have 2 days, today and tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because quite frankly, today is everything. I mean, really, truly, one is so used to the rat race and looking ahead, next month, next year, and then you trip over the most important thing, which is the day that you're living your life in. And so that has helped me tremendously, actually. I still think about COVID with respect because I think that 2.5 years of freeze frame, I mean, to me, it just all seems like 3 days. I can't really place what I did in those 2.5 years, except to realize that there were people next door. There were neighbors next door that I never had the chance to actually talk to them because I was always rushing off somewhere. So that's something I don't want to lose, but I do look forward to coming back to Johannesburg to perform because it is a wonderful city with a tremendous energy. And I think the energy is something that we need to sort of bring back to whatever we do. So I look back to my life as well with a certain amount of disbelief. The documentary they did was great at the time, but it sort of dates itself just by being in the past. So now I try and look to the future, which is tomorrow, and everything after tomorrow is penciled in. I only ink in 24 hours before the event because you never know what happens.
Well, your new show is called Sell by Date, and it's coming to Monte Casino. And Peter, what's Sell by Date all about? I mean, that almost sounds like you're ready to retire and sit on a patio somewhere.
It's wonderful. I'm 77 now. I still feel that I'm sort of 23, maybe 24, but 77. And yes, people say to me quite recently, a lady stopped me in the supermarket and she said, "Oh my gosh, when are you going to stop? When are you going to stop?" I said, "Darling, I'll stop when you die. The day you die, I promise I'll stop. So let me know." And that is the sort of a joke that I make with many people because retirement is something that I don't understand. Retire, I would say retread, reinvent, and come to terms with certain things that aren't working so well. I mean, I keep on saying the hubcaps have fallen off, but the wheels still turn. And Sell by Date is a great title because I've always been fascinated by things that reach their sell by date. Some things last beyond the sell by date. And some things like democracy, that's one of the things I talk about is, has democracy reached its sell by date? Has religion become a big commercial reality, and has that also have questions? So I bring that in as well, which is also treading a very thin line because religion is one of the areas that you don't find a lot of humor in. So it's really truly, it's me on stage, 77 me. I have just had a major, I call it a major amputation, a new knee, which really truly was not for sissies. I mean, it has changed my respect for being a little bit careful where you put your feet. Because now I realize that if I fall over because I'm rushing around, the hip goes and the shoulder goes, and before you know it, you go. And I think my audience is very much that's sort of my generation. I think when people come to see my shows, they grew up with me when they started with Adapt or Die in 1981. And so it's also a show that reflects the reality of where we are. And I think that's terribly important. There's no point in pretending that people aren't unhappy. And I want to also underline the fact that for every piece of bad news, there are 2 pieces of good news, but we have to find the good news. So I'm a terminal optimist, still trying to find humor in states of disaster. I mean, come on, who's thinking here? A state of disaster immediately makes us all feel like victims. Why not call it a state of renewal? We're going to find ways of bringing electricity. We've got a minister of electricity, and he will really be the one to knock at your front door and blow out your candle. So there is a lot of bittere gelächter, a lot of humor that can be found in the things that aren't that funny. I don't think I'm not very good at telling jokes. I love listening to jokes, and I try and remember the jokes to share with other people. But I focus on humor which is very, very personal, like a fingerprint. Everybody has got an individual sense of humor, and that is laughing at fear. If we laugh at fear, we make that fear less fearful. It still can kill you, but you've got your eye on it. And I think at the age of 77, I'm very, very aware of where the dangers lie. Racism, state capture, all these words that are used easily actually have victims, and people get damaged by these things. Cancel culture or culture cancel, I never know what comes first. Can I still do Evita Besaidnet? I mean, am I still politically and socially accepted for me to impersonate a woman? People have said to me, you can't do that anymore. And I say, but it's called acting. Look it up in the dictionary. Look up what acting is. So I want to celebrate acting as well. So I'm on stage, me, and of course, I have characters. I have a whole cluster of characters who everybody over the age of 50 will recognize, who have reached their sell-by date and sometimes their expiry date. The Buertas and the Korenovs and even the good guys, even the Tutus and the Madibas, who are no longer here to do anything brash to bring us back to earth. But then again, I also have my women who, in the story of sell-by date, as I'm in the hospital walking up and down with crutches and walkers to get the blood flowing, I realized that Evita Besaidnet is in the ward and Noah Fine is in the other ward and Bambi Kellerman, so all my women are there as well. So I bring them in. It'll be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm not quite sure what the news will give me, but every day is going to be a discovery.
Unbelievable. Well, Peter Dogeis, your show Sell By Date is kicking off in April. I think it's on the 17th of April, running all the way till middle of May. And if people want to get some tickets, they can visit Web Tickets for those tickets at Monte Casino. Also, phone the theatre box office. We'll put up all the details on the website, and I suggest that you get your tickets sooner rather than later. Peter Dogeis, a man who is always well in his best before date and always delivers fresh content. And it's just so great to have your voice still playing such an active part in theatre and in South African commentary. And I thank you for making time to be on the SANDTON Times Hour.
Thank you very much.
Topical news.
My fellow South Africans.
Big names.
I love that.
The hottest entertainment.
I'll be back soon. Yeah, I'll call you myself.
And everything in between.
What an honor. I was born in Sandton, grew up in Sandton, so here I am.
This is the SANDTON Times Hour.
All right, we're chatting cars again, and joining me on the line right now, who we've spoken to him before, George Meany. He's the CEO of Auto Trader, and they've brought out a very interesting bit of data, as they always do, because they're just an incubator of data. I mean, they're just collecting data all the time on their website, and it's got to do with hybrid cars. And it's one of those things that is just gaining momentum. Some people are telling me, this is still going to take a long time. Others are saying, well, it's happening at a faster pace than you think. But here to dispel myths and to reinforce the facts is George Meany. And George, it's good to chat to you again.
Yes, you too, Alex. Thank you for having me.
So, George, tell me, where are we at when it comes to hybrid and electric cars in South Africa?
Well, I think, Alex, to kind of paint the backdrop a little bit, we've produced the EV Buyer Survey now 3 years in a row. And EV Buyer Survey, in conjunction with Auto Trader's data, and, you think you mentioned at the beginning of this, we collect tens of thousands of data points on a hourly, daily basis because consumers are searching for cars all the time. So layered with our own search data, which is real time, and we can go into history, we also do these buyers surveys where we ask consumers their sentiment and their viewpoints on various vehicle categories and types. And electric vehicles is one that we've done now for the last 3 years. So we decided, after the Toyota Cross was launched last year and seeing the success of the Toyota Cross, looking at the search data, realizing that hybrids are starting to pick up momentum when it comes to consumers and searching for cars. Why is this? Let's see if we can get some more color to the data around hybrid vehicles. And it turns out that I think because of one particular element within the category of battery electric vehicles, hybrids are something that is an alternative because the price point for battery electric vehicles are just way too high still. Because if you look at the EV buyer surveys that we've had in the past, the last 3, the magic number for mass adoption in South Africa was 500,000 rand, still is 500,000 rand. If a car gets produced or put on South African roads at under 500,000 rand, we will reach electric vehicle transition quicker than what we are at the moment. And the cheapest most cost effective. Cheap doesn't mean nasty. The cheapest battery electric vehicle on the market today is the Mini SE at 650,000 Rand. So when the Toyota Cross was launched, which is a hybrid vehicle, they could not keep up with demand. We also started seeing search go through the sky, and so we produced this hybrid buyers vehicle survey. And it turns out that hybrid vehicles is more than likely going to be the middle step between the current ICE vehicle world and the future of battery electric, and that's mainly because of the price point.
Well, just to come back to that point right in the beginning that you made. So you're saying this is the third time you're doing it. And if I remember my stats from university correctly, we've now got 3 points with which we can now work out a bit of a trend line from where you initially started.
From a battery electric point of view, yes.
Right. Okay.
From a hybrid point of view, this is the first one.
Okay, right. I got you. So I think if I got that right, it's increasing, but it's not increasing at the rate we're thinking it is increasing at. And that what you're saying is that people are still looking at a petrol-electric combination before going over to electric completely.
100%. So battery electric searches are still doubling for battery electric. The searches and responses on battery electric vehicles are still doubling year on year, and the number of battery electric vehicles getting onto the roads are still doubling year on year. But what's increasing at an exponential rate more than battery electric are hybrids. So hybrids seem to be the order of the day at the moment, and we feel the main reason is the price point. The Toyota Cross and many other hybrids are actually below the 500,000 Rand price point.
Is the move to a hybrid and maybe even later had an electric partly because of our rising fuel prices? And are we also seeing the instability in electricity delivery also playing a factor in terms of go, no go?
So let me address the fuel price first. So definitely the fuel price and the economic conditions within the country are driving consumers to find new and creative ways to reduce costs. Absolutely. The reality though is that even pre the petrol price increases, searches for battery electric vehicles were through the sky. So we've seen this trend take hold and continue pre the fuel price increases and now through the price increases. The thing that we've seen increase exponentially, though, are searches for hybrid vehicles. So you might have a very good point there in that fuel price increases has caused people to accelerate their need for the transition to something alternative outside of fuel, saving fuel, whatever the case may be. They look at EVs. Way too expensive, 650,000 Rand. Next price point is 900,000 Rand. Next price point is 1.4 million Rand. Realizing that that's not achievable, hybrid is the alternative.
And I mean, to go behind the curtains in terms of the industry itself, I mean, is South Africa ready and geared up to also start producing these cars? Because up until now, I think the factories that we do have in country are all very much petrol focused.
Very good question, Alex. And I spoke to a few OEMs over the last couple of months about this very question around producing vehicles in South Africa. What we don't want to do is import parts, merely assemble, and then not really get any benefit out of manufacture. So the OEMs are taking a slightly different approach. We're still importing all the battery electric vehicles that are hitting our roads. They do have to retool the plants. I think at some point it will get there, but some of the OEMs are looking at Africa as the destination for our current manufacturing processes while importing these battery electric vehicles. So right now, there aren't any plans to retool the plants as far as the OEMs have told me, but that could be something that's on the cards for the future. But at the moment, the volumes are still very low. There's not enough battery electric vehicles in the market in order to retool plants. I mean, you must imagine what it costs to retool plants.
Yeah, it must be incredible, and it's one incredible investment, but it is an investment into the future, and we're going to see how that goes. But interesting times at the moment when it comes to technology and when it comes to cars. And George Meany, CEO of Auto Trader, talking about their 2022 Auto Trader hybrid car buyers survey. I'm going to put up all the details up on the SANTON Times as well if you want to get a little bit more information on that and you want to crunch the numbers and look at them yourselves. It's time for a quick break. We're going to take a quick musical break, and then we're going to be right back with more after this.
Always mix. Today and tomorrow. Mix 93.8. Mix 93.8.
The best of talk and music in 1 hour. This is the SANTON Times Hour.
It's the SANTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8, and that was Swedish House Mafia and Connie Constance with Heaven Takes You Home. And I'm going to take you home as we wrap it up for another week. And before we do all of that, we've got another great show coming to SANTON, and I mean, we're just really lining these up in terms of theatre, in terms of entertainment. Thank goodness we're back to those days where we can just look forward to one great bit of performance after another. And one of the shows that's coming to the Theatre on the Square in Sandton is Defending the Caveman with Craig Jackson, and Craig joins me on the line. Craig, good to have you on the SANTON Times Hour.
Hi, how's it, Alex?
It's awesome, Craig. And listen, Defending the Caveman, for those people who don't know the show or haven't seen the show previously, this isn't a commentary on our current state of load shedding and cooking on open fires at home, is it?
It actually has a little bit of that. I mean, this show is old. This show has been around for nearly over 20 years, nearly 25 years.
I thought you were going to say 2 million years, but okay, we'll take 25 years.
Well, yeah, and we've been caveman for all that time. This is an updated version, so it's got 80% of the original content, but we are going to be talking about load shedding. We are going to be talking about COVID, in small little ways.
Well, Craig, I mean, it is a classic show. It's probably one of the most successful pieces of theatre, I think, globally. I think it originated in Broadway, then spread around the world. We've had some notable South African thespians take on this production, going on weeks, months, years. And you're now stepping into those, I think, pretty big shoes to fill. How are you feeling about that?
Very big shoes. I mean, it went to Tim. Tim started and then went to Alan and then back to Tim. Now I'm the third caveman. Yeah, big shoes to fill. But, I'm trying to take a different angle. I don't want to do what they did. I want to do me and my caveman. So hopefully the audiences who come to see will notice that and go, well, this is different. And it's going to be quite a lot different.
Well, it's a timeless commentary on the battle of the sexes, the difference between men and women. I think men are the hunters, women are the gatherers. It's defined as probably one of the iconic plays to go to if you're single, divorced, in a relationship, out of a relationship, married, thinking about marriage, just in a civil partnership. It's for pretty much everyone. But the times have changed. I mean, like you said, since Tim did it in the 90s, so much has stayed the same, yet so much has changed.
Yeah, I think if you look at me as a man at 43 now, I'm a very different man than my father was when he was 43 in the 80s, It's a far more, I think, fair household between males and females and husbands and wives. So that's what I'm bringing to this show as well. And also I've got a female director. So she very quickly tells me, no, you can't say that anymore.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because that's quite an interesting dynamic. I mean, it brings a whole nother sort of blend to this particular show. Have you found that you're changing things quite a bit, that things have sort of, you've rearranged things a little bit?
Yeah, this show is an American show originally. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't kind of translate to South African culture. So certain things she's like, no, we wouldn't do that. And we have like discussions like, do you think? Yeah, I don't think. And then we go, maybe we'll take that out or we'll change it around. So yeah, which is really refreshing to have, because that's what I want to do with the show. I want people to come watch, and yes, they will remember Hunters and Gatherers, but I think they're going to sit down and go like, hang on, I don't remember a lot of the stuff and it's very different now. And he's putting it across differently.
Well, and I'm sure if you watched it 20 years ago, you were probably also in a different context as an audience member. Those audience members have now probably moved on into different stages of their life, and they will probably look at it through a very different lens. I'm sure that when people watched it in their 90s and in the 90s and were very young, they were probably thinking, "Oh, don't be ridiculous! Like when I get married, it's not going to be like this at all." And they probably look back at those times and think, "Oh my gosh, it was spot on," and so much more. In terms of Caveman, I mean, it's an interesting play from a business perspective. I mean, do you kind of have to apply for this play to be able to get the rights to it? Is there a bit of a screening process? Do you have to commit to a certain amount of performances? What's a little bit of the background there?
The producer of this, who owns the rights, and he's an Icelandic producer, so he does shows around Europe and around the world. And yeah, he approached me. And he said, like, do you want to do this? I think he saw me in a play a couple of years ago, and he thinks I would be a good caveman. So he said, do you want to do it? And then now we've just so I'm kind of producing it with him. And, sets are being built at the moment. And and after this, hopefully this new caveman, which is me, and the new show will tour around South Africa and get some legs.
Amazing. I mean, you're known to have done some very big-scale productions on television. I mean, we were just chatting about this off-air in terms of some shows you've done on Mnet. I mean, you did Black Sails, which was a big international production as well. So this is a little bit different to the usual sort of dramatic, sort of darker stuff that you do. I mean, this is quite light in comparison.
Yeah, I mean, I always find whenever I get employed into a new show or something like that, I think, oh, I'm going to bring this character. And I actually most of the time bring levity. I'm the one that brings a little bit of humor and lightness in my characters and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, it's fun to do. I haven't done a one-man show in over 20 years, and this show is such fun to do. So I'm ready. I'm having, stage is my first love.
Amazing. Well, it's always good to be in front of a live audience. So that's Defending the Caveman, which will be at SANDTON Theatre on the Square. It runs from March 14th to March 25. And if you want to get some more information, we're going to put up all the details on the SANDTON Times website where you can get your tickets, the times, the dates. So don't worry about writing all of that down now because you're probably in transit or cooking or doing whatever it is that you do when you listen to this. But Craig Jackson, I thank you for taking the time to be on the SANDTON Times Hour.
Thanks, man. And yeah, it's only 2 weeks, so these tickets are going quickly. So get booking, guys.
And that's it for another SANDTON Times Hour on Mix 93.8 and always available as a podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify straight after the live broadcast. If you want to get in touch, you can email editor@sandtontimes.co.za or visit our social media accounts at SANDTON Times. And also don't forget the website, www.sandtontimes.co.za. And as always, feel free to send through your questions, your comments, your input, your thoughts, some content ideas. Always happy to hear from you. And as always, thank you to all my guests who made time to be on the show this week. And Vincenzo, grazie. Thank you so much for all your hard work behind the desk, making us sound good. And also thank you to the SANDTON Times team as well as everyone at Mix 93.8. And of course, thank you for listening. And let's connect again next week.
That's it for this week. Thanks for listening to the SANDTON Times Hour. And if you enjoyed it, be sure to share it.